At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, everybody. This is the Super NES podcast, episode number 184. I am Greg, joined by Joe.
Hello.
And we are bringing to you guys and girls today a game that is technically a Joe pick, but he was kind enough to let me kind of influence what we that we covered, because it's like he wasn't sure about what he wanted to cover for this episode, and I happened to think about a game that a streamer that I watch online every now and then mentioned this was one of her favorite games. So I wasn't aware of this before she mentioned it, so I checked it out a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good. So I was able to suggest to Joe that maybe we should cover this game for this episode, and he was gracious enough to agree to it because he thought it looked interesting too as well. So kind of a dual pick here like this one, I guess. Then, but also I was thinking maybe Joe might have some experience with the actual cartoon that this game's based off of, because he is younger than I am. We're covering Goof Troop on the system through the episode. Of course, like developed and released by Capcom, who had the license to produce Disney games, during this time period. Did you have an experience like the cartoon, Joe?
I did have experience with the cartoon, and I just want to mention that this is the last game that Capcom and Disney worked on in this era.
True.
Disney and Capcom had worked together since basically DuckTales on the NES. And
88, 89, I think, about the time period.
Yeah. And then went all the way to this. This is the game that ended it. And I don't think it ended because it was bad. I think they had a 5-6 year contract or whatever,
yes.
And it ran up. But it is interesting when you look at everything in this span of time, including the Aladdin game for the Super NES, and then where it goes from here.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that relationship didn't continue, but anyway.
Well, so I'm sure Capcom wanted to continue it. It's probably Disney, as you know, Disney's been very has gone back and forth between developing games themselves and licensing the rights out,
right?
To other companies. Was it Capcom who made all the Genesis Disney games as well too?
No. The Genesis games.
Were those made by Disney?
I know. Yeah, they were done by Disney and Sega.
Yeah.
Sega, those were first party, and then later on it was Virgin Interactive.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Again, like I said, Disney's gone back and forth between actually developing the games themselves, or or letting other people do it.
Yep.
But yeah. So all the people generally agree that all the Capcom Disney games were very, very good. Both the NES and Super NES.
There is one. There was one that is complete crap, and it's unanimously crap, and it's Tailspin. Tailspin is horrible.
I don't remember playing Tailspin.
Exactly.
Because I played DuckTales. Obviously, I played a Chippendale Rescue Rangers was very good.
Yep.
What else was Darkwing Duck?
Yep.
What else?
All fantastic games, but Tailspin is the turd. It is the turd of the bunch, unfortunately.
Surprised to hear that.
It comes down to control. It controls like poop. That's the best way to say it. It controls like poop, and it doesn't look like visually. It's fine. It's got the same sort of Darkwing Ducks kind of style. So it looks like the animated show. It's just it doesn't play well. Hitboxes are all wonky, and more than anything else, as important as visual and sound is, like, it's got to be gameplay. And if the gameplay is not good, you're not going to have a successful game, and that's unfortunately what happened with Tailspin. But we're a Super Nintendo podcast, not a Nintendo podcast. And back to your initial question, yes, I had a lot of interaction with this cartoon. Disney afternoons were, I was, let's see, around this time I'm like 13, 14, so it's that weird awkward stage where, like, I'm still a kid, I still love to watch cartoons, but if the friends want to go out and hang out, you got to kind of man up and be like, I'm too old for cartoons, you know what I mean, that sort of thing. And so yes, I watched, Goof Troop, I watched Darkwing Duck, Chip and Dale, DuckTales, all that stuff. And one of the first things, and I'll get this out of the way, this game has almost nothing to do with the show.
Yes, I was going to comment on that later on, but yeah.
So that was fun and interesting because I was like, oh, I should probably like watch a couple episodes so this way I can kind of get an idea, to kind of compare the two. And then, like, I played the first, like, I don't want to call it level because they're not really levels. They are, but they're not. And, like, I was just like, I was like, the story is so flimsy, it's not even funny. But, anyways, we'll get to that.
Yes. So just get this. So just to get this fucking context. The Goof Troop cartoon was on from ran from 1992 to 1993. Some of it curiously aired on Disney Channel programming. Some of it aired on ABC. So like go figure.
Saturday mornings.
Right. So there was also a Christmas special made, and they also produced like two movies after the cartoon ended. So not very long, but but the cartoon was pretty well received. People think pretty highly of it these days, but it didn't get the same attention or flair that the other Disney cartoons did for one reason or another. So,
no, if you compare it to like DuckTales, Chip and Dale, even Tailspin, those cartoons were far superior than Goof Troop. Goof Troop was kind of like I don't want to say like a Harold and Laurie.
Lauren Harley.
Thank you. Like it wasn't like one of those like kind of slapstick kind of things, but it kind of was, and they were very flimsy episodes that it was kind of doing tropes over and over again, like that have already been done. And I think the biggest thing with this is like like no mention of Max's mom except for in I think the first episode, and it's simply like she's dead, like no explanation, just Max's mom's dead, and I'm just like, okay, like. Typical Disney, parents not there. But, so, it sets up, for an interesting thing. And then, like, Pete's, like, the best friend with Goofy, but yet, like, Pete's kind of an a-hole. Like, he's not nice. But
the production value of the show, though, was very high because Disney, of course, being a Disney show, they even though it may not have gotten the attention of the shows, they still spend a lot of effort on it. There were some very, very experienced animators worked on it. There were the voice cast was still very good. Like you had people like Nancy Cartwright and Frank Welker who did voice work for the show, like among others. So, and people who have watched the show as kids still think highly of it nowadays. It's just the show didn't get the attention that it probably should have. The show didn't get a lot of attention for one reason or another. As you just probably said, maybe because it's so different than everything else Disney produced.
Yeah,
also,
that's what I was thinking.
Also like Goofy is popular, but I don't really think. I think Goofy's more popular now than he was back then. I think because him being like the Kingdom Hearts games, I think has definitely boosted his popularity by a huge factor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I think that Disney in the 90s, Goofy in the 90s probably was not the same cash draw that he is nowadays. So
yep, I agree.
I think that's probably that could be another reason for it. But speaking about Kingdom Hearts, by the way, just like making Goofy a knight is just perfect casting. Because like he's because he's the he's this slow, stupid, but still like very lovable and noble type.
Right.
So it's like for a knight, it's like okay, perfect. But and then Donald Duck also, like I said, magic magician's also great.
Yep.
But so just like anyway, so yeah, so. The cartoon focuses mostly upon Goofy and his son Max, and Goofy and Max are also the main characters in the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some other characters like the cartoon do either show up or are mentioned in the game, but Goofy and Max are the main focus. So the game came out when the show was the cartoon was still airing. The game came out in North America in July of 1993. It got so it got released in Europe several months later in November, and then actually in July 1994 they also gave it a Japanese release. Why for Japan? I'm not sure. Maybe because I don't know if the cartoon even aired in Japan. But
but Disney's a very popular IP
true,
out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True. Yeah. So, and there are differences to the Japanese version of the game, which we'll talk about here later on. But I think that they were. So probably Capcom is more like we'll play up the Disney strengths of it as opposed to like actually tie into the cartoon thing because the game, I'm not going to bother the Japanese title, but the Japanese title of the game translated basically just Goofy and Max.
Yeah.
So like they dropped the cartoon reference totally with Japanese release, but one of the primary designers for this game, which I actually was surprised to hear about, is a guy named Shinji Mikami, which may not be familiar to you off the top of your head, but he was, but he went on to work on some of Capcom's, to help develop and create some of Capcom's most famous franchises, Resident Evil and Dino Crisis. So, and his newest game was The Evil Within. So, it's kind of strange. There's a guy named for horror games who got to start making Disney games. So. But anyway, so this game is an action slash puzzle game. This game reminds me very strongly of a cross between Zelda and Star Tropics.
I didn't even think of Star Tropics. This automatically, obviously, I made the reference of it looks like Zelda, and it has that feel like every screen that you go to is like its own little dungeon.
A lot of the
puzzle.
gameplay mechanics, however, are borrowed from Star Tropics.
Yeah. So I didn't even think of Star Tropics. As soon as you said Star Tropics, it clicked, and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." But I wasn't thinking that at the time.
Yeah, because the plot for this game is silly, like Joe mentioned. Like it's just as silly as is like in the cartoon. But Goofy and Max are fishing. They see a pirate ship and they realize their friends Pete and PJ have been kidnapped. So they go on a rescue mission, to go get them back. Basically, to the game's credit, there are like animated cutscenes as you go through the game. They had flesh out the story more, and there are other people who you can talk to in the game who give you like clues and hints. So the story, silly as the story is, it's developed. You at least have a sense of progression as you go through the game.
Yeah.
And B, it ties into one of the, and B, it makes sense as being a cartoon plot. So
yeah.
I will give it credit for that.
And to that end, I love that Pete and PJ are kidnapped by pirates. And, the explanation given is that, Pete looks like the former captain who was eaten by a whale, and they just think that he's escaped the whale. And I'm just how do you not realize that they're not the same person? You know what I mean? There's so many plot holes there, but...
like I said, cartoon logic.
Right, so. Cartoon logic, exactly. It was one of those things where I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so as Joe mentioned already, however, the story looks like it comes from the cartoon. Goofy and Max look like dudes like in the cartoon. But beyond that, there's not really beyond that. Yeah, there's not really that much in common like of the cartoon that this game's based off.
Yeah.
Of. Many other like many other games, especially Capcom games that are based off a movie or TV property or whatever, have more of a tie in. This game does. I mean like the enemies are all new and original. None of the music like in the shows used. Not even like the title not even the title screen music for some reason. So it's like it's like the gameplay. Like I said, the gameplay is, like I said, just taken directly either from Zelda or Star Tropics. It's like the overall setting and the plot and characters are for the cartoon, but that's about it. So I don't know. Maybe they started life with something else, and then like Capcom decided to drop the license here.
So that's what I was thinking until I realized that the Japanese version came out like a year later. Because I was thinking, oh, this is a Japanese game that started life as something else, and then they were like, oh, let's slap Goof Troop on it and call it a licensed product. And then, like, I looked and I was like, oh, the Japanese came out after the fact, so I don't know what was going on here.
Yeah, I mean, like, either Capcom was making a game and they decided to, and they decided to drop the license into it, or for whatever reason they decided not to deviate, or for whatever reason they decided not to adhere too closely to the cartoon and kind of like took its own thing. Which, I mean, it's fine. The gameplay, which we'll get here in a moment. Here, the gameplay is solid. I really don't think that the actual, I don't think the game's hurt too much by not being strictly cartoon limited.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So the actual gameplay is the actual gameplay is pretty interesting because it is like an action slash puzzle game. The game's broken into a number of worlds, which have stages in them as well too. And you go through, in each stage you go through various screens, and you're trying either to defeat or avoid enemies, and to solve puzzles to basically advance the plot and keep going like in the game, enemies you defeat by throwing items at them, like blocks, barrels, whatever you find on the ground. You also can get some items. One of the items, hook shot, can be also used to defeat enemies if they're like near water or a gap or something. You also can pick up. You also like pick up fruits. Fruits give you hearts. Hearts allow you to be able to survive hits. If you get enough fruits, you can also get. You also like an extra life. Red diamonds can be found as well. They give you an extra life as well. Blue diamonds, if you find them, earn you a continue. So you are able to continue as often as you have the blue diamonds. And at every stage, you get a password to record your progress. Fairly easy password to write down if you were like doing things like old school. So no real problem there. So you also get various items items in the game to help you to solve puzzles, like to advance. Grappling hooks, as I mentioned before, can be used to cross gaps. Bells can be used to lure attention of enemies, to set up puzzles or line them for an ambush. Candles light up dark areas. Shovels dig up softer for items. Again, very Zelda-ish. Boards can cover gaps and bridges and to unlock certain gates and doors. There are the puzzles you can solve where it's like you have to push blocks in certain areas, certain spots to unlock things, or you have to defeat all the enemies on screen to advance. And at every stage there's a boss fight. And the bosses are defeated by picking up whatever item they throw at you and tossing it back at them. So they get more difficult as the game goes on, of course, but the actual formula of those doesn't change from stage to stage. So, and as I mentioned before, the flavor in every stage, you get a password. Some of the game stories advance, but like the cutscenes, which look very good. Like the cutscene graphics are very like very nice and cartoonish looking. So, finally you go on to the next stage. Not an overly long game. Most of the playthroughs on YouTube are clocking anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half.
Yep.
So, however, what makes this game really shine is there's also 2-player simultaneous mode here. So, I forgot. So I did not ask Joe about this because I figured Joe was going to be super busy this last week. But I did ask, but I did try it briefly when briefly somebody else like online. And two-player mode is very fun. As fun as the game is, as good as the game is in one-player mode, two-player mode like where it shines, because it's like Goofy and Max do have differences. Sorry. If one player you can play as Goofy or Max. Goofy moves slower than Max, but but he can also deal like more. But he can also deal like more damage. So which players the matter of preference. I was Goofy. But however, in two-player mode, the two of you taking advantage of your pros and cons to work together to clear screens and move on. It feels like very challenging. So. The game multiplayer is pretty similar. It's pretty similar, except for like one big exception. If one player loses all their lives, they can respawn with 3 more lives. If the other player can finish the screen and move on like next screen. However, if both players lose all their lives on the same screen, they either have to continue or the game's over. So. Anyway, so that's the actual gameplay in a nutshell. Joe, do you care to expand upon that? What do you think about the actual gameplay itself?
No, I think you covered the gameplay pretty well. I kind of tried to rope my fiance into playing this with me so I could get the two-player experience. That didn't quite work out. I did last night. My buddy Corey came over and visited for a bit. And I ended up roping him into it because he was a big Super Nintendo guy growing up. So he was like, I've never even played that game. So I was like, yeah, we should totally go through it. Like, not letting him know that basically I was making him work. So we played through it for a bit. We played probably a good 45 minutes, and I just wanted to get a taste, is what it was, and I think we could have easily blown through that game. But there were other games that we wanted to check out and whatever else. We checked out the new Kirby demo, which is really good. Anyways, it's very simple. You pick up items that can be picked up. You hurl them at your enemies. You got your different items you can pick up. Your hook shot. The plank at first I thought was pointless. I was like, why the hell do I need a plank? Until, boom, I found a bridge that had a hole, and I was like, oh, I need that plank, and had to go backtrack for it. I don't like the fact that you can only hold 2 items.
Yeah, that's a drawback.
That is definitely a drawback because of, like I just said, having to go backtrack because you dropped an item that you ended up needing. And enemies respawn the minute you leave and come back to the screen, which is good and bad. It's bad because obviously enemies respawning is always crappy, but it's good too because you get used to that combat, and getting used to that combat helps you later on in the game when it gets a little more difficult.
Right.
What was the other thing I wanted to mention? Oh. The hook shot is probably the best weapon item, whatever you want to call it, in the game.
Oh, yeah, by far. Yeah.
Not only can you get across water with it, you can grab weapons with it, but you can also stun the enemies. Or, as Greg mentioned, which I thought was a really nice little detail, is like, especially in the first level, like there's a lot of spots where you're on like a bridge area with some enemies, and you can just keep hitting them with the hook shot until they fall into the water, and they actually do like that silly animation where they're trying to catch themselves. So that was pretty fresh and or I said refreshing to see. Other than that, I mean, and I know we're gonna get into this, but I'm just gonna touch on it now. Like, the music is so forgettable. So playing multiplayer, I think is actually a benefit. So one thing that my buddy Corey and I didn't talk about once while we played for almost 45 minutes is the music. We didn't once mention the music. He didn't even notice the music because we were too busy talking about what we need to do, having fun. Like, it is what it is. Like, the music is serviceable Period. End of story. And that I don't think really much more needs to be said about that. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those games that like it's all right there. If you play the first 3 screens, if you walk in whatever direction and you hit 3 different screens, if by the time you get to that 3rd screen you're not feeling it and you don't like it, you're probably not gonna want to stick with it. You're not gonna like this game. You get everything you need to know and what's gonna happen in those first 3 screens. I mean, some would probably argue in that first screen, you know, where you have to pick up and move stuff. But, yeah, I mean, the block puzzles were driving me nuts. The first one where you have to unlock a gate to get a key. One was frustrating because I got to the area with the key before I even found out where the key was. So that was frustrating because I knew I had to go backtrack and find a key. And then to find out that I got to kick blocks around in a certain way to be able to get that key was even more frustrating. So I kind of knew what I was going into, you know, when we decided on this. I knew it was more of a puzzler than an action platformer or whatever. But, yeah, I didn't expect it to be so puzzly.
I mean, like, it is puzzly a large part. I wouldn't say, I think, I'd probably argue that it's just, so I'd probably argue it's probably a bit more puzzly than, yeah, I don't know. It's probably, to me, it's probably about the same level of puzzly as like Star Tropics is. You know,
Yeah.
I think Zelda's more, I think Zelda games like more puzzly than this is, but yeah. So like, for the most part, I agree with what you said. I think that the game does throw in some different twists upon the puzzles later on. Later on in the game as you advance, there are 5 stages.
Right.
There are 5 worlds in the game. By the way, there's the beach, the village, the castle, the cavern, and the power ship. So I mean, by the time you finish World 1, you've seen most of what the game has to offer. The variations come in like different puzzles arranged different ways to be more interesting and or more challenging. But yeah, so once you, but that first world gives you a very good taste of what actually the game has to offer with it.
Yeah.
So it's like I think it's so again I think that the gameplay fits with the whole vibe about like Goofy himself in the show and whatnot, because like, you know, Goofy's not gonna like use a sword to attack enemies or whatever, because it's like he's gonna, you know, because actually hitting them with objects or whatever, puzzling his way through things is like, you know, it does fit, you know, it does seem like more like fitting. So obviously this game was meant for obviously this game was designed for kids. So
Right.
the overall difficulty level for adults is not that bad. I mean I think most adults will have so I think most adults, like Joe just said, will struggle with a couple of puzzles trying to figure them out at first, but but then get the hang of things and then go on from there. Because like, you know, most kids who play this game found it, I found it like very challenging because it was designed for them after all. But still, I mean, like, adults, there's some okay, puzzle action but here. Like I said before, if you're a big fan of games like Zelda or Star Tropics, I think this game is worth checking out because it does offer like more of those. More of those things to you. The graphics are very good in this game, but they're very, very Zelda-esque. I mean, like, it just screams Zelda at you as far as the actual like, locations and the enemies and the layout and whatnot. But we're also covering a game in this podcast later on in a few more episodes, which also like very Zelda-ish. So, but anyway, so music. I think the music's fine. I do agree with you. It's kind of like forgettable, but there are some very like good in the moment tracks.
Yes.
Sorry. As you're playing it again, fitting with the game. Not very from the cartoon, unfortunately, but like it is what it is. So,
yeah. No, like I said, it fits the game, and it's not anything spectacular, but it's serviceable. That's the word I would use. It's serviceable.
Right. So, Anyway, so you obviously, so it sounds like you had more fun playing this game in 2 players as opposed to 1 player, then, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. The game definitely does shine 2-player
Yep.
mode, because it's like, I think that as good as the game is, so as good as the game is in 1 player, 2-player mode is definitely like where it shines. Like, if you have so if you have somebody to play this game with, it definitely is and you enjoy Zelda or Star Tropics like at all, this game is definitely worth checking out. Like I said before, if you're by yourself, this game's worth playing if you enjoy if you enjoy games of this type. I mean, this is your typical Capcom Disney game of the time period. Very well programmed, very well very well gameplay. Whether or not it clicks with you depends upon certain things.
Right.
But the actual gameplay itself is fine. So and so the game, so that's pretty much how people thought about it too when it came out, back in the '90s. There was a lot of coverage for this game, at least reviews, as far as scores went. Most magazines didn't actually give it a full write up, but they just mentioned a score for it, a brief summary. Nintendo Power was one of the few places that actually gave a proper full review. They said the challenge was fairly low, which is understandable, made for made for kids.
Right.
They did say the game, they did say the game was great fun. They gave it 3.5 out of 5. Just to give some other examples of scores, EGM gave it 31 out of 40. Joypad gave it 84%. Nintendo Life gave it 7 out of 10. Playtime gave it 78 out of 100. The game ranking aggravator for this score for this game is 70%, which seems right. That's that's a good solid score. That's all based upon the I think all those scores are based upon the 1-player mode. Obviously, as I said, if you're playing 2-player
Right.
mode, it does shine even more. So like I said, this game, and modern reviews this game fall pretty much follow pretty much the same beat. People who grew up watching the cartoon are probably not going to find too much in common with this game. But like I said, if you enjoyed Capcom Disney games this time period, this is still a very solid fun game to check out.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's more puzzly and less actiony than most than many other Capcom games, I think. But it fits the overall. I do think it fits the overall theme of what they're going for in this game, to make it more puzzly anyway.
Yeah.
Because one of the few tie-ins to the cartoon, and cartoons actually using Goofy and Max, using their brains, such as they are, to figure their way through the game. So the Japanese version of this game, however, does have some differences, because we mentioned before, the Japanese version of the game came out a full year after the US release, and I think because of the fact that the cartoon was not known in Japan, Capcom decided to make the game harder for the Japanese market. So they added in a difficulty setting of the game, which the US version of the game does not have, or the European version, for that matter.
Interesting.
So there are 3 difficulties that the Japanese version has. You either can play easy, which is the same as the US/European version, normal, or hard. So the passwords also differ depending upon what difficulty level that you're playing at. So the difficulty settings affects things like harder versions of the block puzzles. Blocks can be moved to different locations, so as to make defeating enemies with them harder. Also enemies take more damage, and items, healing items or fruit, sorry, they're called fruit, is not as easy to find in more difficult versions of the game. So so if you want to challenge with this game, I'd say probably check out the Japanese version instead. It's you'll miss the story. Like I said, the story is kind of silly anyway, so it's not really missing much. So. Interesting choice by Capcom to do that, but I think I understand like why they did it because, like I said, Japanese gamers probably expected a harder game to begin with, and
Right.
and they weren't familiar with the cartoon, so yeah, makes sense. So before we move on here to Joe with eBay and with eBay and like whatnot, do you have any other thoughts thoughts about the game, final observations, that kind of stuff?
No, I mean, I think we pretty much covered it, and I just want to harp on the fact that this is definitely a multiplayer experience more than a single player. Prime example, single player, I got through the first level, and I liked the idea of that first boss where it's kind of like whack-a-mole, but they're throwing bombs and you throw it back.
Right.
I thought that was pretty cool. But playing multiplayer, so playing on my own, by the time I got through that boss, I was kind of like, okay, I've seen this game. I really don't want to go further, and I kind of, it's whatever. But having, a buddy to play with, I actually wanted to continue playing because I was having fun with the co-op experience.
Right.
So
Yep.
if despite as we're going to talk about eBay prices and whatever else, despite all that, this is one of those games that if you have a friend and you have the ability for couch co-op, you should check this game out. If not, this is actually a hard pass for me. I don't think it's worth seeking out, in my opinion.
I think I liked it a bit more than you did then, because like I said before, I think this game, if you enjoy games of this type, I think this game is worth playing through. But especially the Japanese version of the game, because that would be like an extra challenge to the game if you find a game too easy. So,
Yeah.
But I get that. I understand that because it's a very solid. Very solidly programmed, very solidly put together Capcom Disney game, but as you the listener may defer from listening to Joe and I, whether or not you enjoy the game single player depends upon your experiences. What kind of game you're looking for. So, this may be one of the few times that we actually disagree on something, Joe.
Maybe.
but we do agree that well, let's agree. If you have the option two-player mode, definitely where
Right.
it's at. The game definitely shines. The game definitely shines the two-player mode for sure. So, eBay pricing is typical for Super NES game as far as the pricing goes. It's fairly cheap in carts. CIB gets pretty expensive. It's easy. It's easy enough to find. The game was sold. Being Capcom, the game must have been sold in large amounts. 31 copies of the game are currently listed on eBay. When I searched for it, 99 copies were recently sold. These prices include shipping. Card only. The price of sold copies ranging from $9 to $50. So, typical card pricing. $9 is very good for this game. I think that's fair. CIB, if you're a collector, that's where it gets more pricey. The CIB copy ranging from $50 to $266, depending upon the completionist and how good the quality is. So, and there was even a steel copy of this game recently sold for $320.
The game's good, just not that good. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So being Disney, it's not been. Being Disney, it's not been re-released on anything. So if you don't have the physical game, you have to emulate it to play it. I'm kind of surprised Disney. I'm kind of surprised Disney hasn't tried to put together a compilation of these games yet. I think they have all the rights to them. Because actually, I don't know. Maybe Capcom actually keeps the rights to the programming itself, but the actual characters would still be Disney. So they probably work something out if they wanted to.
I'm sure they could. I just think Capcom's too busy re-releasing Resident Evil on everything they possibly can that they're not even focused on the Disney products that they could be doing. I mean, it is what it is. I'm a sucker. I'm going to buy the Resident Evil 4 remake, so I'm contributing to the problem. But
I mean, actually, that made me think. Who did? Okay, all right. So, okay, yeah. So, I mean, I mean, maybe Capcom does have the rights to the games because, like, I was looking, because DuckTales Remastered came several years ago was actually published by Capcom. So it's like, I mean, the developer way forward probably would have had to get permission from Disney, but they made it work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, DuckTales. DuckTales can get. DuckTales could get released. I'm sure the other games could get. The other games that could too. So.
Yeah. Very true.
I'm actually not quite sure. I'm actually not quite sure about how the licensing arrangement worked, but yeah, DuckTales Remastered is very good, by the way. Even if I've not played it, I highly recommend it. It's a very good modern remake.
Oh yeah, very good, very good.
But so okay, I think that pretty much wraps us up then. Next time in the podcast, we're doing another Capcom game. Wasn't planned this way, but it's okay. We're going to be looking at the sadly somewhat overlooked, I think, Mega Man 7 for the Super NES, which I say overlooked because I think most attention got focused on the Mega Man X games for the system, but Mega Man 7 I think kind of didn't get the attention that the game probably should have. So we're going to be talking about how the hows and whys and how the game plays in that episode. So, do you have an experience with that game yet, Joe? Or
so I have some experience, but it's from the Mega Man Anniversary Collection.
Oh yes, okay, yep.
So, save states are amazing.
Yes.
But yeah, we'll get into it when we record. But let's just say I have a love-hate relationship with Capcom and Mega Man.
Do you have the Mega Man X collection?
I do. I have the regular collection that first came out with 1 through 10, and then I have the X collection.
Which was like, what, 5 X games I think they made? Was it 5 or 6?
I don't know. Because I bought it on Steam, and Steam just gives you... It's nice. With Steam, they don't split it up into separate collections. It just has them. Let's see. I can look real quick.
Well, anyway, while you're doing that, I'll finish up here. Thank you, as always, for listening to the podcast. We very much appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, whatever, feel free to either leave us a comment on our Facebook page, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, where can I find you at the phone call?
You can find me on Facebook, and also you can find me on Twitter at JOESUX30, and the Legacy Collection is 4 Mega Man games.
4 games, okay.
Oh, because they did split it up into 2 collections.
Okay.
Why? I don't know. So, yeah, so I have the first collection. The second collection has 5 through 8. So 4 on each. So 8.
Are you talking regular Mega Man or Mega Man
X? So it's 4 each. So X through 1 through 4 is on the first collection. X 5 through 8 is on the other.
I didn't realize they made that many games. I dropped it at 4.
Yeah. That's probably why I haven't looked to see if I could get the other ones. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah. Alrighty then. As always, thank you very much for being on the podcast, Joe. And
yeah, of course.
Thank everybody out there for giving me a few minutes of your time. We will catch you again later on in the next episode. There's some very special fun episodes coming up in weeks to come. So stay tuned for those. Thanks as always, everybody, for listening to us, and stay safe, be well. We'll catch you again next time. Later.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.